You know that feeling, right? If you learn to ride a bike as a kid, you can go years, even decades without touching one. But the moment you hop back on, something just clicks. Yeah, you might be a little wobbly at first, but your body just remembers. It's so universal we have that saying for anything we can't forget. It's like riding a bike.
So let's actually ask that question. Why is riding a bike just like riding a bike? That simple phrase is actually pointing to a really deep scientific mystery. What is it about certain skills that makes them so durable, so permanent, when you can't even remember what you had for lunch yesterday? Well, in this explainer, we're going to get to the bottom of it.
So here's our very first clue. This type of memory, it seems to play by a completely different set of rules. It's unbelievably resilient. So much so that even when people suffer from severe amnesia and can't remember their own families, these how-to skills often stay perfectly intact. This has a name, of course. Scientists call it motor memory. And you'll see here, it's what's known as an implicit memory. Now, that's different from an explicit memory, which is you consciously trying to remember a fact for a test. Implicit memories are different. They're learned by doing, by sheer repetition, not by thinking about the steps.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Because you build these memories without your conscious brain really paying attention, they can stick around even when your conscious mind has totally forgotten they exist. And there is this one amazing study that just shows this perfectly.
Okay, so picture this. It's the 1980s. A group of researchers bring in some students and show them a bunch of photos. Then they show them fragmented, incomplete versions of those same pictures and just ask them to guess what they are. Simple enough. But then the researchers decided to play the long game, the really long game.
They waited for 17 years. I mean, that's practically a whole childhood. Then they actually managed to hunt down some of the original students and get them to come back to the lab for a second round.
And what they found was just wild. The original group, that's the first bar on the chart, was still way, way better at identifying those incomplete pictures almost 2 decades later. They crushed a control group who was seeing the photos for the first time. Their brains had quietly learned the patterns, and that memory was still in there.
But here is the absolute kicker. Get this. 4 of those students said they had absolutely no memory of ever being in the original experiment. None. The memory of the pictures was clearly lodged in their brains, but their conscious memory of the event itself, totally gone. It's a perfect example of implicit memory. It's like a ghost in the machine.
So this huge divide, having a memory but no idea how you got it, it really begs the question, are these memories even stored in the same place as our normal ones? Our investigation has to start by looking at the brain's main memory hub, the usual suspect for this sort of thing, a little area called the hippocampus.
You can think of your brain as having 2 different filing cabinets for memory. Your explicit memories, facts, names, events, stuff you study, that all gets filed away by the hippocampus. But implicit memories, those skills and habits we've been talking about, they seem to be filed somewhere else entirely. So the question is, where? And the best clue we have comes from this truly incredible case study. There was a patient whose hippocampus was severely damaged in an accident, and he just couldn't form new explicit memories. For years, he volunteered at a library, and over time, he actually learned the entire super complex Dewey Decimal System. He could shelve any book perfectly, but if you asked him how he knew where it went, he'd just shrug. He had no clue. His hands just knew what to do. I mean, that's pretty definitive proof, right? These skills are being stored somewhere completely outside the brain's main memory center. So if the hippocampus is out of the picture, then where on earth are these skills hiding?
All right, let's meet our prime suspect. It's this region tucked away at the back of your brain called the cerebellum. You can see it's kind of separate from the main brain, which might be why all this learning can happen under the radar of our conscious mind.
The cerebellum is basically your brain's motion control specialist. Its whole job is to fine-tune all your movements to make them smooth and coordinated. Think about playing an instrument or, you guessed it, making all those tiny, constant, subconscious adjustments you need to stay upright on a bike. That's the cerebellum at work. And it does this with these unbelievably complex brain cells called Purkinje cells. Think of them like tiny conductors for an orchestra. They gather all the incoming information, what your eyes are seeing, what your body is feeling, and they convert it all into one precise signal for movement. Then they send that signal out to your muscles, and you get this beautiful fluid motion. So, case closed, right? The cerebellum is the answer? Well, not so fast. As it turns out, the cerebellum isn't the whole story. just when we thought we had it solved, this other brilliant study, this one involving jugglers, came along and showed that motor memory is much more of a team effort than we thought.
So researchers took a group of people who had never juggled before and scanned their brains. Then they taught them how to juggle. 3 months later, once they were pros, they scanned them again. And yeah, they saw physical changes in their brains, but not just in the cerebellum. They also saw changes in the parts of the brain that track visual motion and plan hand movements. But here's the crazy part. They then had them stop practicing for 3 months, and when they scanned them a final time, those brain changes were still there.
And that brings us to the big reveal. This is the real secret behind why riding a bike feels so permanent. It's not because the memory is stored in one little spot. It's because the memory is written all over your brain.
So what this all comes down to is that motor memory isn't a single file on a hard drive. It's a distributed network. Learning a skill like riding a bike physically rewires multiple parts of your brain all at once: your visual system, your planning centers, your coordination hub. And because it's this huge, interconnected team effort, the memory becomes incredibly strong and really, really hard to erase. It's a backup that's saved across the entire system.
And that kind of leaves us with a final thought to chew on. Every single time you effortlessly type on a keyboard or tie your shoes without thinking, or even just walk down the street, you're tapping into this incredibly powerful unconscious network. So what other amazing skills has your brain quietly perfected right under your nose, turning them into something that for you is just like riding a bike?